Hello and welcome to another adventurous episode of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today is a guy who's never met a chandelier he hasn't swung upon, Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello.
This month we're going to be taking a look at 4 sword-swinging, swashbuckling adventure movies. So hoist the sails and load your blunderbuss because this is Saved by the 90s.
I don't need some fancy cologne to tell me I'm a man. I use Skin Bracer. It smells great, but it also cools and tones my skin. Confidence is very sexy. Don't you think? Skin Bracer Aftershave.
By men. First up, we have a big-budget interpretation of a classic English folktale. Released on June 14th, 1991, and directed by Kevin Reynolds, this is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Magic, evil, and passion. The legend as it's never been told before. Kevin Costner is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Rated PG-13. Starts Friday, June 14th at a theater near you.
Robin Hood decides to fight back as an outlaw when faced with the tyranny of the sheriff of Nottingham. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to just apologize for any kind of echoey audio that I have on my end. I'm in a kitchen right now. This is my temporary setup, so I do apologize. I hope to have better audio quality next time. But with that being said, let's get into...
I'm sure listeners enjoy hearing you wherever you are.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Let's get into this thing. So, I've seen this movie a couple times now, probably 3 times. I think this might be the 3rd time I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie that I always wanted to see as a kid. I don't know if I ever did see it as a kid. I really can't remember, but I distinctly remember as an adult being like, man, I want to revisit Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And I did revisit it, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. And this was years ago, so I was kind of curious to see how I felt about it now. And I have the same feelings. I think that this movie is very bad on most levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my main criticism and with this movie can be translated to the other movies that we're going to discuss this month. And that's that it is, I think, horribly miscast. I think that that's one of the biggest problems with this movie is that the casting is very bad. And I don't think Kevin Costner plays a good Robin Hood. He doesn't seem right for the role for me. And then you have other people like Christian Slater in here who has no business being in here. Like he just shouldn't be in this movie. But I get that he was kind of a big deal back then. But then there is some good casting. Alan Rickman,
yes,
was a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the most part, man, I was not feeling this movie at all.
I think I'm a little bit more forgiving of this movie than you. I do agree that there are some fundamentally bad decisions at the core of this movie's casting, but I do think it is a case where the more you kind of move out from that middle and towards the peripheries of the movie, and this is something I'll bring up occasionally, I think, through this episode. These are movies that are just like, the more peripheral you get to the supporting parts, it's just like a great parade of character actors. You just get to watch character actors in these fantastical settings just doing completely ridiculous things. And
yeah, like Michael Wincott just eating it up, like some classic Michael Wincott stuff going on here.
Yeah.
And then you have Michael McShane as Friar Tuck. I think that that's a good choice, too. I think he plays a good Friar Tuck. And Little John, too. Nick Brimble, who plays Little John. He does a pretty good job, too. So, yeah, it's not all bad, but I think that the main cast... And Morgan Freeman was fine as Azim. I feel like he didn't have a whole lot to work with, but... I don't know, man. This is a movie. It's so cheesy. Everything about this movie is so cheesy. And like... For some reason, when I was a kid, like I remember seeing the trailer for this and thinking, like, "Oh man, that movie looks so cool! It looks so cool." Because it kind of looked like it was like gonna be kind of dark and gritty, which it seems to be trying to do, but it doesn't really pull that off.
It occasionally tries to be, but I don't think there are times when it even is trying. It's just kind of I don't even know.
And I think that that's another kind of issue that I have with this movie is that I feel like it doesn't know what it wants to be a lot of the times because the tone of this movie is just all over the place. I mean, a lot of it is intentionally goofy. Like there's a lot of
Mhm.
kind of goofy comedy in this too, which it's like if you're trying to make this realistic, gritty Robin Hood story, the kind of slapstick comedy doesn't necessarily work. And that's not to say that you can't have that in a movie like this, but the frequency that they try to inject comedy into this movie makes it feel uneven to me.
Hmm.
And also the comedy mostly didn't work
Mhm.
because, Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work when it's forcing the comedy, when it's trying to be deliberately funny in that way. I think there is a sweet spot for this movie where it's just kind of this breezy adventure movie in the broadest sense of the word, when it allows itself to both have heft that keeps it going and also kind of just plays into the more extreme absurdities to trying to tell the story in this particular way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there are some aspects to it that make it feel like it's a more kind of fun, light adventure. But I think for every like set piece that they do that works, I feel like that there's multiple for me that bring it down. And the fact that this movie is almost 2.5 hours long, you just feel that length.
It just keeps going. It really does.
Yeah, it's weird. The one there's one movie that we're gonna discuss this month that I knew I didn't like. Like I
Mhm.
knew right off the bat, like I don't like this movie. And the funny thing is, like that one was the ended up being the one that I found the least grating for some reason this time around. So I don't know. It's fine. Like like if you haven't seen Prince of Thieves, I would say you might find some entertainment out of it, but it feels like a movie that's very of its time,
Mhm.
especially with like the act, the just Kevin Costner doing his thing and like just struggling with not knowing if he should do an accent or not. Like there's sometimes he slips one in there. Same with Slater. Like sometimes he'll throw in a little bit of an accent. Other times he'll just forget about it completely.
Mhm.
They're just kind of doing their own thing there. Their haircuts are like they have very 90s looking haircuts too. Like they didn't even
Isn't that
bother.
always the greatest thing about a movie like this, when they keep their like contemporary haircuts?
Yep. And then you have, of course, the iconic Bryan Adams song, which may be more popular, more famous than the movie itself.
There's a good case to make on that front.
I mean, everybody knows the song. Not everybody saw Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but everybody knows everything I do. I do it for you.
Hmm.
And
It's really worked into the like
well,
the
that's what
core of this movie's music,
yeah,
isn't it?
so that's what I was gonna say. I was like, they don't blatantly play the song, but
No,
they weave it into the score, so you still hear it. It's just,
you've heard
y-
it by the time it's over.
yeah, yeah. They very subtly weave it into the score, which I think kind of works. I think that's kind of a yeah. I'll give him that. I think it was nominated for an Oscar. The
I was
song.
about to get to that. Yeah. Whenever I think you have discussions of the best original song category at the Oscars, I think people focus on the idea that there was an era of the Oscars where this category had legitimately popular songs that existed outside of the movies they were in. And over
Mm-hmm.
time, whether it's been through a rule change or the change in voting, that doesn't really happen anymore.
No, and the other thing is the longer distance you have between when the movie was released and like now, people sort of disassociate the song with the movie.
Hmm.
So eventually, when it first comes out, the Bryan Adams song is directly tied to Prince of Thieves. I mean, if you see the music video for this, they interweave clips from the movie and all of that stuff. But the more time that goes by, people forget that song was created for this movie and they just look at it on its own, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And also not the only Bryan Adams song that that comes up in one of these movies. What's really surprised me.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot of similarities between all of the movies that we'll be discussing this
Mhm.
month. I think that all of them have a lot of the same tropes in them, and I think a lot of the same shortcomings too. So Kevin
Mhm.
Reynolds, this is not a director that you will likely know. I mean, you may know him. He wasn't like super famous or anything, but he did do Waterworld, another
Mhm.
Kevin Costner debacle, I guess we could call it.
I guess.
I like how on his IMDb for Kevin Reynolds, there's a personal quote here, and it says,
Cool.
Kevin Costner should only act in movies he directs. That way he can work with his favorite actor and director. So
So yeah, I feel like we got a lot of history right there.
yeah, yeah. And then the other thing is it says trademark often
Uh-huh.
works with Kevin Costner.
Kevin Reynolds seems like someone who has a lot of things they want to say.
I mean, okay, so it's he often works with him.
Is that even true?
I'm looking. So he did do Hatfields and McCoys, which had Kevin Costner. By the way, that was a great miniseries. I don't know what else he did. So I mean, that's three. Was there anything else? I don't think so.
I guess that's all they needed.
Yeah, I guess that's often enough. Yes, I don't know.
Hmm.
Either way, I don't know, man. I guess if you're a huge Kevin Costner fan, this is probably your jam. He had a lot of fans back in the
43
day.
minutes.
Like people love Kevin Costner, which is so weird to me. Like because he's
Yes,
such a bad actor.
you've mentioned this before in our review of his unofficially directed, as we concluded, 1999 movie for Love of the Game.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can check that episode out.
Oh yeah, we haven't done the Postman yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh yeah, the Postman is. I'm looking at it now. That's the one that is 3 hours long, correct?
Yep, and that was a huge bomb too.
That's one of the ones we suggested we can review in the episode that we're saving for release until the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's our end of the
Something
world.
something to enjoy when that happens.
Yep. All right. Anything else that you want to add about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves? Oh, I do want to mention
Okay.
Robin Hood Men in Tights. I need to mention this because I've seen Robin Hood Men in Tights more.
We talked about it. Yeah.
I've seen it way more than I've
Mhm.
seen this movie. So it sort of has this like weird kind of reverse thing where every time I see this movie, I just think to myself, oh, like that's the same thing that happens in Robin Hood Men in Tights. But the other thing that I think is interesting when you see this and compare it to Men in Tights is just how much of a carbon copy Mel Brooks used to make Men in Tights, whereas most spoof movies they pull from lots of different other genre or movies of a certain genre, like Hot Shots, for instance. But with Men in Tights, like it just follows Prince of Thieves beat for beat, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, we talked about that one a little while ago on the show.
Mhm. Yeah, which
Another one to look up in the
I mean that's great. I would watch Men in Tights 10 times over this because it tells
for one, it's shorter.
yeah.
You
And
probably could watch Men in Tights 10 times in the time it takes you to watch Prince of Thieves.
And the thing is, it tells the exact same story. So like you get the same thing out of it. So, but it's just so much better. It's just so much more entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Anyway.
I feel like we get to a point where we can talk about the story of these movies, but then we're just critiquing like the Robin Hood legend as it exists in our culture today after a point.
I mean, I like the Robin Hood mythos. I like that. I'm a huge fan of the Disney animated Robin Hood. Oh my god, it's like might be one of my favorite animated Disney movies, which is interesting because that one didn't do very well, if I remember correctly. It was not really lauded like a lot of the other Disney movies. Our second feature film this month is an exciting modern retelling of a classic French adventure novel, directed by Stephen Herrick and released on November 12th, 1993. This is The Three Musketeers.
They've got the look. They've got the style.
Bad timing.
They've got a problem.
My rear is killing me.
They're three courageous guys
Those musketeers are a menace.
out to prove it's one for all and all for fun. The Three Musketeers.
God, I love my work.
Rated PG. Now playing at a theater near you. Check newspaper for showtimes.
France, 1625. Young D'Artagnan heads to Paris to join the Musketeers, but the evil cardinal has disbanded them, save three. He meets the three, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and joins them on their quest to save the king and country. So, we were talking just before we started recording how, for both of us, this was the last movie we watched before recording today, and we've already forgotten everything that happened in it.
Yeah, I mean, I could
Not
say
even
the same,
100% on those pronunciations.
I could say the same thing about another movie that we watched this month too. It's just one of these movies that it goes in and out of my brain like so fast. I think that this movie is again woefully miscast. You have the Three Musketeers. Okay, so you have
wild choices here.
You have this iconic trio of heroes. Who do you think would be a good fit? Oh yeah, Kiefer Sutherland, Oliver Platt, and Charlie Sheen. I mean, what bizarre choices. To be the French heroes, Oliver Platt, Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen.
This fundamentally does not feel like a real movie.
It's just so weird. And then you have Chris O'Donnell playing D'Artagnan. Now, Chris O'Donnell was huge during this time, and he was in like tons of stuff. And he's whatever. He's fine. Not in this role. Like he should not have been in this movie because again, it seems like no one is even trying to be in a period piece. They're all just like being in the 90s. They're just here. They're just in present times.
Isn't that fundamentally what makes these movies great? As I was saying earlier, as the more time goes by, the better it gets in that respect.
I mean, it is kind of because it is hilarious. Like it's just so funny to me, especially pretty much every line that Chris O'Donnell speaks is it's so out of place and so bizarre.
This movie is not set in 1625. It is set in a 1625 theme park that was filmed in 1993.
Yeah, it's like set in a medieval times restaurant in Orlando in 1995. That's where this takes place.
Yes.
You have Tim Curry in here as the Cardinal. He's the main bad guy, and he does a great. He does a great job. He's amazing. I love Tim Curry in a bad guy role, and he's just chews up the scenery.
Oh, he's having a great time.
Yeah, he's just having fun with it. He knows what this movie's all about, and he's just enjoying it. You have Michael Wincott back as one of the he's like the heel. He's like the second in command kind of guy. He was a former musketeer who betrayed them, and yada yada yada, whatever.
I may go on to believe that at least these two movies and maybe more are the same movie within about 3 months.
Well, see, yeah, that's the thing is like when you rapid fire these movies that we're discussing this month, they just all blend together because they're all the same movie. They're all these like kind of crappy choreographed Errol Flynn inspired, sword fighting movies. I'm pretty sure every movie, in fact, I know every movie this month involves someone swinging from a chandelier and hitting the rope that's tying up the chandelier and crashing to the ground because that's a classic.
Oh yeah.
Also for like there's some gunplay in this, but you got to think like if they're musketeers, there'd be more. Like they should be shooting guns more because they're musketeers. But
you would think that, but
actually, I did look that up, or my wife did actually while we were watching it, and confirmed that at first they were called musketeers because it did refer to the gun, and then as time went on, it was just sort of a term that stuck as like they're the elite guards. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there's a lot of sword fighting and stuff in this. None of it is particularly great. I read that the actors went through like fencing lessons and stuff, but obviously it didn't really stick because none of them are that good. It's just
listen. There's one movie here that both has a unique visual identity and swords that feel like they fit with a movie, and we're not there yet.
No, actually, one thing that I was going to mention that I forgot, and I'm sorry to go back to Prince of Thieves, but when you watch Prince of Thieves, it almost feels like it was like Sam Raimi inspired in a lot of the visuals. How they do like the camera shots that like the like sort of first person where it's attached to the arrow and stuff like that, and where they do like the weird like zoom ins and stuff like that. It feels very Raimi inspired. Like,
Well,
but
I guess that
anyway.
explains Costner and Raimi's collaboration in 1999's For Love of the Game.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
That could be. It's entirely possible that Prince of Thieves was like shadow directed by Costner too.
I think that's the theory that we have to get to once we start thinking about Costner in the 90s.
He just directed everything he's in.
Yeah.
Whether his name was on it or not.
Mhm.
So, yeah, Three Musketeers. This is a live action Disney movie. It doesn't really, it's just not very good. Like this is during a time when most of the live action Disney movies sucked pretty bad, and they just were not very good. And I would say that this is included in that. It was a relatively expensive movie. It was like $30 million to make, and yet a lot of the sets to me did not look very good. It looked very paper mache to me.
$25 million on fencing lessons down the drain.
Yeah. Yep. I did read that Charlie Sheen was unable to make the fencing lessons because he was shooting Hot Shots Part 2. So, yeah.
All sorts of great stories with these two movies so far.
This had a
This
song.
does pale in comparison to some of the stories for the next movie, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. This had another Bryan Adams song. This was a collaboration between Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting. All for Love.
By the way, the first credit and the end credits is the first song.
Which is what I wanted to mention. Like that's crazy to me.
I can't remember the last time I saw something like that.
Yeah, the end credits of this movie, the first thing that shows up is that song.
Yes.
Credit for that song before the cast. It's so weird. Like I've never seen that before. I mean, there must have been some kind of crazy deal.
Oh yeah,
for that. I did see here that Chris O'Donnell won a Razzie for his performance. He won a Worst Supporting Actor award.
I mean, on one hand, you could say that he's definitely not right for this role, but on the other hand, I am loath to give the Golden Raspberries credit for anything.
No, of course not. It's
yes.
Nobody takes them seriously. They really shouldn't exist at this point.
No.
Oh, he was. Did I say won? I meant to say he was nominated. I apologize. Yeah, Woody Harrelson won for Indecent Proposal, which is BS in my opinion, because I think he was fine in that.
Kind of redundant with the Razzies, isn't it?
That year it was for supporting actor. It was Woody Harrelson, Chris O'Donnell, John Lithgow for Cliffhanger, which completely disagree with that too. Keanu Reeves for Much Ado About Nothing. I haven't seen that. And then Tom Berenger for Sliver, which obviously I disagree with because I love Sliver.
Yeah. I mean, no, we can't have this. That's always my take when you get to the Golden Raspberries comes up. I don't
even pay attention to who wins those anymore.
I feel like we've gotten to a point where even the mainstream entertainment press has gotten pretty good at ignoring them completely at this point. I
think there's a time and place for the Razzies, and I think that time and place has passed. Like I think that right now we should just be celebrating, achievements rather than bringing negativity into, like, there's enough negativity that we're dealing with right now. And like everybody knows if a movie's bad, like Morbius, for instance, like we all know that Morbius.
I haven't caught up with Morbius yet, Adam.
I haven't either, but I'm sure that's what it is. But
I mean, that was the thing that a lot of people brought up with the way the Oscars have been presented for the last couple years, and in particular some of the material this past year. It was like, this is a show celebrating movies, and most of the jokes are about how they hate all the movies.
Yeah.
So no, it's the.
So talking about Stephen Herrick, this is a guy who did a ton of stuff. He started his career off by doing Critters, which is a movie I love. He did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, The Mighty Ducks. He did Mr. Holland's Opus, 101 Dalmatians. I mean, he just did.
This is a really long filmography.
Yeah, he did a ton of stuff. I mean, a lot of his stuff has at least some kind of like sentimental value to me. There's some nostalgia tied to some of his movies for me, but
101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, 101
Also
Dalmatians.
from a past episode.
And, you know, he's done a lot of TV in the years since, but he's still working. He did a movie called Afterlife of the Party, which appears to be a Netflix movie.
Apparently so.
That came out last year, I guess. I love how Netflix just dropped. Like, there's Netflix movies that I literally never heard of.
Netflix, if we're talking about who seems to not particularly care for movies, Netflix.
Yeah, they don't care about their own movies.
No. They release like 10 every week and promote none of them.
It's so weird. It's so weird that they just do not give any, they don't put any, like, they don't even send out press emails for all their movies. Like they'll push some of them, but not all of them.
I guess there'd be nothing but Netflix press emails if they did.
But you would think, you know, like some like certain PR agencies, for instance, they'll send you an email with like the month's releases. They'll be like, here, this is what we got going on this month. And then each one will have like links and like information and all of that stuff. Netflix doesn't even do that. Yeah. And Netflix doesn't even do that. Like they'll email you about like that movie or that show, you season 2 coming out on this day. And it's like, okay, well, I don't care about you season 2. Let me like, what movies do you have going on? And then I'll look and I'll be like, oh, that, you know, like some movie that I really wanted to see, I found out.
Like a major movie from a major filmmaker.
Oh yeah, like this just happened to me a couple weeks ago when the Richard Linklater movie dropped on Netflix, and I was like, "What?
Yeah,
there's a new Richard Linklater
Same here.
movie that just suddenly came out."
I'm gonna watch that soon. I didn't know when it was coming out.
Yeah, just like suddenly appeared. It's just it's so weird, man.
Yeah, it's. When I hear about Netflix, I hear from Netflix about their movies in the context of the year when it's at the end of the year and they decide to send 55 giant coffee table books of their movies for your consideration, and that's what they count as promoting their movies.
Yeah, that's Netflix, all right.
Next, we have an epic pirate adventure that boasted a massive $98 million budget, but sadly didn't quite live up to expectations. Released on December 22nd, 1995, and directed by Rennie Harlin, this is Cutthroat Island.
From the director of Cliffhanger. Here she comes. No! And Die Hard 2. Comes the action-adventure event of the season.
Open fire!
Cutthroat Island, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, December 22nd.
A female pirate and her companion race against their rivals to find a hidden island that contains a fabulous treasure. It's a female pirate, don't forget. We need, yes, because if we just said a pirate, it's not just a pirate; it's a female pirate. It's like a female doctor, a female lawyer.
Yeah.
So this stars Gina Davis, who at the time was married to Rennie Harlin. I think Rennie Harlin did Die Hard 2 before this, and what else did he do before this? He did
Cliffhanger.
He did Cliffhanger. He did The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which was a classic Andrew Dice Clay vehicle. And so I guess there was a lot of and this was interesting. Like this was before The Long Kiss Goodnight, which I would say that Long Kiss Goodnight's probably my favorite movie of his. But this movie, it's funny that he was even allowed to direct movies after this one, because it was such a colossal failure and the budget was so out of control. But the thing is, though, like when you watch Cutthroat Island, you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, that money is on screen. Like,
Yeah, you look at
it's
any frame of this
huge.
movie, and it's like this movie looks pretty expensive.
It's huge. I mean, they have like giant ass pirate ships in this that they blow up, and this is back before everything was CG. So they're blowing up these pirate ships, and it's also interesting that there's just not that many pirate movies out there. Obviously the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and then there's some TV shows, but there's not that many pirate movies. And I remember when this movie came out when I was a kid, I was really excited to see this too, and my dad was like, nah, nope, looks horrible, and he didn't take me to see it, so I didn't see it until I was an adult. And it's bad.
It's not great.
I think that the problem with this movie, one of the main problems that I had with it was the editing. I think the editing is absolutely atrocious. Something tells me that this movie just had problems nonstop. It just seems like it's one of those movies where it was just problem after problem, and I bet that a lot of the editing in this movie is to cover up as many problems as they could, but as a result the editing looks so sloppy to me. Like, there's these weird moments where they'll be like, things will be in slow motion but they don't cut the sound, and so people will be having full speed conversations while we're seeing things in slow motion, so nothing matches up and everything just feels really weird. I think that this is also a movie that was miscast just on the part of Matthew Modine. I don't think Matthew Modine should have been the male lead in this as William Shaw, because I don't think that he's nearly as charismatic or likable as someone like Carrie Elways, who I imagine they wanted to get for this because it feels like the type of role that Carrie Elways would be perfect in. But for whatever reason, they got Matthew Modine, who is doing the best he can to be Carrie Elways, but he's failing at it because Matthew Modine, I think, is like, at least during this time, he was like inherently a kind of a skeezy, like yuppie kind of person. Like, you don't really like Matthew Modine in at least his earlier stuff. And so he's like a kind of a hard character to like in this too.
I see a completely unsourced claim on the film's Wikipedia page, so I'll read it out as fact, is that Michael Douglas was going to play that role, but he had the conditions apparently that filming had to start immediately because he was only available for a limited time, and his character had to have the exact same amount of screen time as Gina Davis. and once they did not oblige those demands, he left.
So Matthew Modine was always the consolation prize.
They have a whole list of names, and not a lot of them would really work here. There's lots of great stories about this production. Not that we're going to be a show that just talks about the production, but we're kind of going to be a show that talks about the production. The one that's stuck in the back of my brain ever since I read it however long ago is Matthew Modine claiming that one of the reasons costs were so high is that Rennie Harlan and Gina Davis had several cases of, allegedly, reading again, V8 vegetable juice shipped out to the set in Malta for themselves. Toward the end of the shooting, there was an entire room full of unopened V8 vegetable juice. So everybody, that was your wrap present on Cutthroat Island. You got some V8.
That's so weird. I just feel like... Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, why would that have been what drove shooting costs up? Did V8 cost $30,000 a can?
Yeah. It was very, very hard to come by. V8 was a delicacy back then.
So, like how the Three Musketeers, $25 million on $25 million on fencing lessons. Cutthroat Island, $87 million on V8. It's just all these movies were like the drill tweet about candles.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I mean, yeah. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I can't imagine it is.
Like, I mean the V8 thing, like, obviously the cost is probably a drop in the bucket compared to
also how big was that room?
I know, like, was it a closet? It was probably like a little closet or something.
Yeah, like a couple shelves of V8 or something.
I do like to imagine Gina Davis just requesting case after case of V8, but not drinking it, just wanting to have it.
Have it there. I mean, you never know what's gonna happen.
Just in case. I do like thinking about that. I like Gina Davis. I think she's good in this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think that she's a good choice for this. I think that also I feel like back then they still weren't quite sure how to handle like women in a lead action role. Like they weren't quite sure how to handle that. So
I mean, think about the plot description treating
Yeah.
the operative novelty here. It's a woman in the lead role here.
yeah,
Female pirate.
So I feel like there's a lot of times where they're just like reminding us that she's a woman, and it's just kind of weird to see that in today's day and age. It kind of definitely dates it more. And even if you're trying to look at this movie as some sort of like historically accurate thing, like which you shouldn't do, but it feels very of the era to me as well. You have the one thing that I will say about all four of the movies that we're discussing is none of them, even though they're all pretty lengthy, none of them have like much setup at all. Like they all just like dive straight into what's going on. And
I kind of love a movie that'll just do that though.
Yeah. And
that has the confidence, or in this case, sometimes the unearned confidence.
Yeah, to just dive in. They're just getting right into it. And you have there were some other kind of like 90s tropes in this movie too. One of the things that I thought was funny was the eel scene. Like you have to have some kind of like gnarly like creature, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know. This movie, it's bad, but it's kind of a fun bad.
Yeah, I don't dislike this at all. I think there are like some really genuinely good moments and set pieces here. It's like I could see myself, having another look at it down the road. I do not resent the 2 hours I spent with it.
And there really is a ton of set pieces in this. I mean, they're blowing up like towns.
Oh, yeah.
They have multiple villages and buildings and ships. And so if you're a fan of explosions, like they go all out.
This is the movie for you.
Yeah, I would say it's probably like the second coolest like naval battle fight scene that I've seen in a movie, maybe next to Master and Commander.
There's some great set pieces here.
Yeah,
I just think it's nuts going back. I know we mentioned this a while ago. I just think it's nuts going back. One, I'm still not completely processing exactly why this movie did so badly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a good movie, but at the same time, to do as poorly as it did, I don't know. Like, I don't know how it could have bombed that bad. So just to put it into perspective, this only grossed $10 million off of a $98 million budget.
Yes. Which is, I believe the industry term is bad.
Yeah, I mean that's just so bad.
Yeah, like it's astonishing to me that like Rennie Harlan he had another movie come. He had The Long Kiss Goodnight come out the next year, and then Deep Blue Sea 3 years. Like this was not really in the grand scheme of things any damaging to his career at all. Which good for him.
Yeah, naturally. And now if it was we know.
Yeah.
We don't even have to say it. If it was a woman who directed this, her career would be over.
No, they would not have let the budget. They would have fired her, like in the middle of production.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept thinking. Like we have this movie that literally loses like an amount of money that can't even be fathomed. And the thing I keep thinking back is like, perhaps because it's a movie that lives in my head all the time, The Rage Carry 2, a movie that did poorly but not badly, and then Cat Shea could not make another movie for 20 years.
Yeah.
But
I was looking because I was curious, like, okay, Rennie Harlan did Die Hard 2, which I don't know how that did. I imagine that it did good. It probably banked a lot off the success of the first Die Hard. And right before this, he did Cliffhanger, Cliffhanger, which Cliffhanger was a critical failure. Like critics didn't like it at all, which by the way, I love Cliffhanger, but it did pretty good at the box office. It had a $70 million budget, which was very big, but it did gross $255 million worldwide. So that's a pretty solid worldwide gross. Now in the US, it only brought in 84 million, but that worldwide gross is pretty huge.
Yeah, that would have been like on the upper range of how much movies were costing because, you know, James Cameron does the first $100 million movie in 94 with True Lies. And then like that's when the explosion in budget size, then he makes the first $200 million movie 3 years later.
Yeah. Long Kiss Goodnight was a $65 million budget, which was still very high. I thought that might have been. Please tell me The Adventures of Ford Fairlane cost like $100 million. It cost 20 million. Okay. I was like, oh my god, if that movie. And wait, just how much did Die Hard 2 cost? Because that must have been what
62 million. 62 to 70 million is the number I'm looking at.
Yeah. I'm seeing a 70 million estimate. Okay.
That's always kind of my thing, is just looking at a movie that, because the first Die Hard probably costs half that, if that.
Yeah.
I think the best example of a movie's budget just going so much bigger between the first one and the second one is like the first Speed cost like, I don't know, $20 million, and then Speed 2 cost $150 million. Speed 2, another. We're just calling back to, we've been doing the show long enough we can call back to it. Speed 2, there's another, we did an episode on that.
Speed 2 Cruise Control.
And yet we have still not done an episode on the first Speed.
Really? Oh, no, because I watched the first Speed
yeah.
when we covered Speed 2. That's what it was.
I think we spent a good part of our review trying to figure out if we had ever talked about the first Speed on the podcast yet.
Yeah, I think we did. I mean, even though it was Speed 2, I imagine that we talked about the first Speed probably more than
it's
than
one
Speed
of those
2.
movies that's probably just come up so much that you could cut together all of our discussions and it would be the length of like one of our full reviews on a movie.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know, man. Cutthroat Island is it's an interesting one to me because I don't like, it's not good, but it's also like just it's almost like Waterworld. Like I would compare it to Waterworld in that
I haven't seen Waterworld.
it's not a good movie, but it's also just kind of like fascinating. And I find Waterworld to be entertaining, even though I recognize it as kind of a train wreck. So that's sort of how I look at Cutthroat Island. Like it's cheesy. It's incredibly cheesy. There's a lot of like dumb, goofy things in it. A lot of things that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. Like the mutiny scene. Like if they're all going to the same place anyway, why did her crew have a mutiny against her when they still ended up going to Cutthroat Island? So there's a lot of like bits of plot that you can pick apart and be like, none of this really tracks. But at the same time, it's just kind of dumb fun.
Yeah, I cannot like it. There's a lot of just great points that Cutthroat Island just hits. Like it's not particularly good, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, just if you're a fan of good editing, don't come to this one because the editing is atrocious.
No,
and that's where I'll leave that.
Definitely at that you can see the very troubled editing process play out in front of you.
Yeah. All right. Our final film this month is based on the popular pulp novel series by Johnston McCulley, directed by Martin Campbell and released on July 17th, 1998. This is The Mask of Zorro.
He defied the law and became a legend.
Zorro was a servant of the people. He did what was needed. Now he's needed again.
Now he will train the next generation
This is going to take a lot of work.
and avenge his past.
Tell her who her real father is. The truth dies with me.
Antonio Banderas, Anthony Hopkins, The Mask of Zorro, rated PG-13.
A young thief seeking revenge for his brother's death is trained by the once great aging Zorro, who is pursuing his own vengeance. So, Adam, what do you think about The Mask of Zorro?
I think it's boring. I never liked this movie to begin with. Now, interestingly, my wife really loves this movie for some reason, so I've seen it multiple times. And the thing about this is, I was expecting this one to be like the one that I just did not enjoy rewatching for this. However, that wasn't the case. In fact, I actually enjoyed myself quite a bit revisiting this one. I still think that it's boring, and I still think that it's like one of those movies that I kind of just forget about the moments after I watch it. But I think comparing this to the other three movies on a quality level, I think that this one is much higher in quality than the other movies. I think that the script is better, although I think that the script, which I didn't mention for the other three, but I think the scripts on all three movies are decent and have some fun moments, even if certain line deliveries are not quite there. But I will say that, yeah, actually, I was kind of surprised that I enjoyed this as much as I did, even though I still think that it is kind of an average action adventure movie.
I actually enjoyed this movie a good deal, a fair amount, and I think maybe more in comparison to the problems I had with the other movies that we talked about this month, because as I said earlier, it does have its own identity. It does kind of have its own flair and verve, and it's just got good energy, I think, for
yeah. I think that the set pieces in this are very good. I liked a lot of the set pieces, and it's fun too. Like this movie is heavy on action, but it also knows exactly what it is. It knows exactly what kind of tone it's going for. Whereas Prince of Thieves, I think, is a little bit confused at times as to what it wants to be. I think Mask of Zorro knows exactly how it wants to present itself, and I think that it acutely draws inspiration from the pulp series and the old Zorro media, and reinvents it in a really fun way, and kind of keeps the same spirit as the original TV shows and movies and whatnot. So I think they did a good job with it, and I've seen the sequel to this, The Legend of Zorro. I didn't rewatch it for this show, so I do forget most of that movie, but I do remember finding that one to be like pretty decent as well, and having a lot of really fun set pieces on that one too. So yeah, it's decent. This is a decent one. I think that as far as comparing it to the other three movies, I think that this is like the best one as far as overall quality.
Yeah, I think if we're ranking this in terms of movies that I would have any genuine desire to just like rewatch, this is at the top, and then followed by Cutthroat Island, maybe.
Yeah, same actually.
Yeah.
I would do that as well. Now, looking at the director, it's not a surprise that this had a lot of really good set pieces and things. This is the director who did Goldeneye. He did Casino Royale. He did No Escape, which is a movie that I think that we should cover at some point on the show. He Vertical Limit, which I believe was a Chris O'Donnell, if I remember correctly. It was. I liked Vertical Limit a whole lot, so that's a 2000 movie, unfortunately. But so we won't be covering it.
I definitely feel like we've built up like a little well of movies that we would talk about if only they came out, between 1 and 11 months before.
Yeah, Vertical Limit, definitely the one, because that movie's, it came out in 2000, but when you see it, it's like, it's very, very much a 90s movie.
For me, the movie in that category that I'd most want to talk about would be the first Final Destination movie.
Oh, I know. Oh my God. Most recently he did The Protege, which I didn't see, but it looked kind of fun. That's the one with Michael Keaton and Maggie Q and Samuel L. Jackson.
It's quite a thing that you said that, and for a second I thought maybe that was on a direct Netflix movie. Anything could have been.
You never know. You never know. That one, I believe that one actually went to theaters.
Meanwhile, this podcast has actually been direct to Netflix since its inception, but neither you or I were ever told.
We don't know anything about it.
No. It's much like if you make a movie for Netflix, they won't tell you how many people watch it.
Yep. He also did Edge of Darkness, which is the Mel Gibson one, which is actually pretty good. Like that one's not too bad, even though it's Mel Gibson. It's not too bad. Oh, but it looks like he did Green Lantern too. So, oof, yeesh. Oh, they can't all be winners, I guess.
Yeah, making movies for that long, you can't have 100% hit rate.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that casting Antonio Banderas was a no-brainer for this. I mean, that is like some expert level casting there. I mean, I for the other three movies that we discussed, I think that they all had bad casting choices. This one, on the other hand, I think was right on the money with the casting. They interestingly got Anthony Hopkins playing the original Zorro, which I think was kind of an interesting choice. I like Hopkins. Not sure how I feel about him being Zorro, but
no, it doesn't make a ton of sense.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's casting that on a certain level for the way the movie ends up working makes sense. On a certain philosophical level, there's some casting choices that really don't make sense.
Yeah. Seems maybe we could call it whitewashed. I don't know.
I mean,
that'd be appropriate.
I think that's maybe where we'd have to land on that.
You have Catherine Zeta-Jones in here as Elena. She's great in this too. Might be one of the earlier.
Yeah, I think this might have been one of her first like major like.
Because I remember like Entrapment. I remember when Entrapment came out. I think that that Mask of Zorro was like pretty big for her. But I remember Entrapment, I think, is what really propelled her. Either way, she's great in this. It's just a fun movie. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of the Zorro story, and I will reiterate that, like, as far as like comparing this to other action adventure movies, it's not like super high on my list, and I do find it to be somewhat dull, but it's well made, it's well shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I like the James Horner score. It's got a really good score to it. Apparently, they're going to be bringing Zorro back. There's two Zorro movies that are they're in various stages of production. One is just called Z, and it's a post-apocalyptic Zorro movie.
Okay.
Apparently, Gael Garcia Bernal is playing Zorro, and it takes place in a post-apocalyptic future when Zorro needs. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Don't know how that's going to work, but sure, why not? And then the other one, which I don't know if this is actually going to get made, but it's the Django and Zorro crossover. Django Zorro, which I would love. And apparently there have been discussions of Jamie Foxx coming back as Django and Antonio Banderas coming back as Zorro for that one.
Is there recent news on that, or?
I don't know how recent it was. This was on IMDb that I saw this, so I didn't look into it too deeply. But it's based on a comic book. They're adapting a comic book, so I don't know. I hope that gets made. I think that'd be really cool.
It seems like one of those things where I'm kind of looking for it, and it doesn't seem like it's not ever happening, but it's one of those things where it's just in that weird.
I think it's very unlikely that it'll happen. Honestly.
Yeah, it's in that kind of it's hitting the tail end of what you call that weird phase where there's nothing about a project, and either you're going to get a bunch of new updates about a project in production, or you're never going to hear from it again. And it's starting to hit the tail end of that.
It's starting to get the vapor. If they
don't say something now, then it's never happening.
Yeah, it's totally going to be vaporware. It definitely could be, but I kind of hope it happens.
The fate of honestly, it's gotten a lot further than most movies do.
Yeah,
if you can even get to that point. So a project that gets to that point where it gets to the public knowing about it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
You could call that a victory, really.
Call that a win, certainly. All right. Anything else you want to add about Mask of Zorro?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, nice. Well, I think that's going to do it for this month. Thank you so much for listening. You can send us your 90s topics and suggestions to 90s@filmpulse.net or by DMing us. Why can I not talk? Or by DMing us on Facebook or Twitter at 90spod. And if you get a moment, consider reviewing us on iTunes. That would be very much appreciated. Until next month, for Ken Bakley, my name's Adam Patterson, and this has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone.